Hey friends, welcome back to the Psych Professor. My name is Sarah, and here we discuss psychological hacks that you can apply to your everyday life. Now, I am super excited about this video because I feel like out of all the information and research I have learned about psychology, this was probably one of the most influential research that I ever got. It changed the quality of my relationships. I'm sure it's a big contributor to why I have been married for 5 years and in a bliss. And I'm just so excited to share this research with you. No joke, I'm not a dramatic person, but it can literally change your life. Now, this video is going to be broken down in 2 parts. The first part, we're going to talk about where our relationship expectations come from, why it is that we behave in particular ways, or why we have particular beliefs in relationships, because I think it's really foundational and important to understand why we have particular beliefs or behaviors when it comes to relationships. And then the second part, we're going to talk about research-based strategies that you can use in order to improve your relationships, whether it's a relationship with your family member, your friends, or your loved one. Now, make sure that you block out all distractions, pay attention, because I promise you it's going to be worth it. Now, before we dive deep into the 4 research-based strategies that can really improve your relationship, I think it's really important to discuss the fact that we all have had different experiences that contribute to the beliefs we have about relationships and the different behaviors that we use in the context of relationships. Now, there's a lot of research on something that psychologists call attachment, and I'm not going to go deep into that, but I wanted to bring this up because attachment is a big contributor to why it is you have particular beliefs or behaviors about relationships. So attachment is basically the quality of relationship that you had with your parents when you were young. There's secure attachment, meaning that your parents were responsive, they were there, they were present, and you had a good, safe relationship with them. And then there's insecure attachment, which means that maybe your parents weren't responsive, they were absent, they were maybe unpredictable. And depending on your attachment style, psychologists say that you form an internal working model. An internal working model is basically your expectations of how 2 people should behave in a relationship and what you expect the other person, how you expect the other person to treat you. So the reason why this is important is because your relationship with your parents can in fact influence your relationships today. Because we know that the quality of the relationship that you had with your parents can influence your beliefs about what a partner or what a friend should behave like, or what you deserve in a particular relationship. We also know that beyond your early relationship with your caregivers, your experiences can deeply affect why you behave in particular ways or why you believe particular things when it comes to relationships. So whether you had a good example of what a good relationship was, or you saw very toxic or dysfunctional relationships, whether you yourself were in an abusive or dysfunctional relationship, can really affect how you view relationships today and how you behave in them. Relationships experience can cause insecurity, can cause mistrust, can lower self-esteem. So depending on your experiences, of course, it's going to affect the beliefs that you have about your current relationships, what you expect of the other partner, and how you expect your partner to treat you. Partner being either romantic partner, friend, or family member. So I wanted to start off with that because I think it's important for us to consider the beliefs that we have when it comes to relationships and the behaviors that we use that maybe aren't so beneficial for us, because we can always change, and by considering and being aware of the factors that contribute to who we are today, we can improve. Now that we have gotten that out of the way, we're going to go over 4 research-based things that you can use and that I have used in order to make your relationship awesome. This can be, again, with a friend, with your partner, with your family member. It's really important that, we try really hard to use these every day. So the first thing to consider are your cognitive attributions. So cognitive attributions are the explanations that we give for other people's behavior. So I don't know if you've ever encountered someone who always has a negative explanation for someone's behavior. It could be something as ambiguous as someone maybe not saying hi to them, and they immediately jump to the conclusion that they're either mad at them, the person doesn't like them, the person ignored them on purpose. They immediately jump to something negative to explain that person's behavior. When in reality, maybe they didn't say hi to you because they didn't see you, because they're worried about their homework, because they were tired, and really, even though, they know you, they're just too stressed out. I mean, there's a whole host of reasons that could explain someone's behavior, but we all interpret someone else's behavior either through a positive light or a negative light. So when it comes to relationships, it's really important to know what type of cognitive attributions you are making about the other person. So I use this example all the time because I think it's easy to grasp, and it's actually something that's happened in my life. So I've been married for 5 years now to an awesome man. I love him so much. He's the best. But early on when we started dating, he was always late to our dates. Now, if you've heard me talk before, one of my biggest pet peeves is tardiness. I just hate it when people are late because it makes me feel like, I'm not important, or because it's like you should be responsible, just be on time. But early on, he just was always late to our dates, and I would always get, annoyed. So then I had to consider, okay, what cognitive attributions am I making for his tardiness? Am I going to go the negative route and say he's selfish, he doesn't care about me, I'm not a priority, he's a bad person? Or am I gonna go with a positive attribution and say something like, maybe he's in traffic, maybe he doesn't understand that, being on time is important to me, maybe he got caught up in a task. I mean, there's so many explanations for someone's behavior. And when we don't take the time to give someone the benefit of the doubt, you're going to go into potentially a rabbit hole that isn't even true. So how did I handle this? Basically, I, said, listen, I'm sure that you don't mean to be late and that our dates are important to you, but whenever you're late, it makes me feel like I'm not a priority and it makes me sad. That's all it took. He was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't think about that. Honestly, I just got caught up reading a book, and then he was never late again. Well, now he has like a internal clock that's like nudging him, to be on time, but that's beside the point. My point with this is that if you're always making negative attributions for your friend's behavior, your family member's behavior, your partner's behavior, you're never giving the person the opportunity to show you that they really care about you, that they're a good person, and that they're worth being in a relationship with. Because the thing is, humans aren't very good at making explanations for people's behavior. There's something that psychologists call the fundamental attribution. And this is the phenomena or the propensity for humans to attribute internal characteristics to people's behavior instead of considering the context. So for example, let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. We are more likely to attribute internal characteristics to that person's behavior, like he's a jerk, he's inconsiderate, he's a bad person, as opposed to considering the context of why he might have cut you off in traffic. Maybe he didn't see me. Maybe he's trying to get to, his little girl's ballet recital. Maybe he's stressed out or just lost a family member and, his brain is elsewhere. Do you see how you can make different explanations for people? And depending on which route you go to, it'll either make your life better or worse and the other person's life better or worse. If I make a negative attribution about the guy that cut me off, maybe I'll go off and, get angry. I'll put myself in a bad mood. I'll maybe, insult the other person. Where if I make a positive attribution about his behavior, I'm more likely to be patient or feel sympathy and, not be mean to the other person. Sometimes you're never going to know why someone behaved a particular way, but if you always give the person the benefit of the doubt and then you communicate to them how their behavior made them feel in a non-threatening way, you're more likely to make a positive change in your relationship and more likely to continue building on your relationship. The second thing that we need to do, which kind of goes along with cognitive attributions, is to see those around you with rose-colored glasses. Now, there's this group of researchers that conducted a study with newlyweds in particular, and they basically examined a ton of factors that might predict marital satisfaction, in other words, how happy the couple was years down the road, in order to see what ingredients make a marriage happy. And what they found is that couples or people that believed the best of their partner had the happiest marriage. So it goes along with cognitive attributions because we can make this choice of making a positive or a negative explanation for other people's behavior, but in particular in the context of a romantic relationship, believing the best out of your partner and giving your partner grace is the biggest predictor of marital satisfaction. And I'm sure this would work too if you're just, if you're dating or if you're just in a partnership, trying to think of the most generous explanation for when your partner does something you dislike is going to go a long way. The third thing that really improves relationships is trying to incorporate novel or fun things in your life. So whether that's with a friend or whether that's with a family member or with a romantic partner, when you are intentional about doing things together that are fun or exciting, you kind of trick your brain into thinking that the other person is fun and exciting. Now, what do I mean by that, and what's the evidence for it? Well, there was a really famous study done by Dutton and Aaron where they basically interviewed men on two different types of bridges. A really shaky high bridge or a bridge that was stable and not rocking at all. So on the one bridge, you can imagine that someone might become physically aroused, meaning that their heart rate might start going faster, they might have a pit in their stomach, their hands might get clammy because it's high and shaky, and so your body's reacting to that uncertainty of that bridge. Of course, in the other bridge, because it's really stable, it's not high up, you wouldn't feel those physiological changes. And what they did is that on both of these bridges, an attractive experimenter approached the males and were like, hey, I have an experiment where I just ask you a couple of questions. Do you mind doing that for me? And they were like, sure. And then the experimenter would give the person, the male, her phone number and be like, if you have any questions, feel free to call me and I can explain more to you, the experiment. And then they also, someone else after she left, asked the males to rate how attractive this experimenter was. And what they found was that the males that were on the shaky bridge were more likely to call the attractive female experimenter and rated her as being more attractive than the men that were on the stable bridge. And the interpretation for these results was that the men that were on the shaky bridge misinterpreted their arousal, meaning the physiological reaction they felt being on the bridge, to the female experimenter, meaning that they thought they were feeling this way because they liked the experimenter and they were attracted to her. So what this is called is misattribution of arousal. There are several theories of emotion, but one theory of emotion is that we first see a stimulus or experience an event, we then feel arousal, so our body changes, we get angry, we get happy, whatever, physical reaction comes with a particular emotion, but then we have to interpret why we are feeling a particular way. And usually we attribute the emotion to whatever's most salient or to whatever makes the most sense. So going back to doing novel things with your friends or your partner or your family members, when you're doing something new and exciting, like watching, a new movie or seeing the sunset or going on a roller coaster, you're likely to attribute those positive emotions to the person right next to you. So you're going to form this really strong association of whenever you're with this person, you're having a ton of fun and they're exciting and they're interesting. So you can see that if you're intentional about pursuing these new activities, then you're likely going to improve your feelings, your overall feelings towards that person. So what I do is my husband and I always have a weekly date night. Every week we choose a day in which we are going to put away our phones, put away our work, and we're going to do something fun. Now, it's not always crazy. Sometimes it's just sitting by the fire and talking, or going on a walk in our neighborhood. But we're very intentional about cutting out the monotony of, our everyday routine and doing something together. And the last thing, of course, you can never talk about relationships without talking about communication, is communication. So the first thing about communication is that you need to be very explicit about what you expect out of a relationship, out of a friendship, whatever it might be. Because like I talked about, we all have different experiences that shape the way that we think about relationships, or how we think the other person should behave and how we should behave. So it's really important that you are very explicit about your expectations when it comes to a relationship. How often do you think you should spend time together? How should you be talking to each other? What kind of activity should you be engaging in? What do you expect from the other person? It's really important that you're explicit, because people can't read your mind, and the likelihood of you two having the same expectations, it might be small. So it's really important that you're explicit. And it's also very important that you avoid the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse whenever you are in conflict. Now, I did an entire video on this because it is so incredibly good and important. Trust me, if you haven't watched that video, you need to pause this right now, click on the video and watch it, because besides what I just shared with you today, that piece of research also made a huge impact on my relationships. But just to give you a very brief preview, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are negative communication patterns that we tend to use that are extremely toxic to our relationships. They include things like criticizing the partner, saying things like, "You're selfish, you never do this." Things like stonewalling, just shutting down and not actually engaging with the person. Defensiveness, which is when you fail to take responsibility for your actions and fail to see the other person's perspective and listening to their perspective, and instead of start attacking the other person, which I feel like is the most popular horseman of the apocalypse. At least that's what I used to use, and I've gotten better at doing. And then the last one is contempt, which is being disrespectful to your partner, either by rolling your eyes, being sarcastic, name calling. Those are things you should always avoid with anyone you care about. I always find it remarkable that the people closest to us are the people we treat with the most disrespect, and that should never be the case. So it's important for us to not get comfortable or complacent in our relationships and make sure that we are treating the other person like we would want to be treated. So to sum it all up, we know that our experiences and our relationship with our parents can shape the way that we view relationships and the way that we behave in relationships. And it's important to consider what our beliefs are and where they might have come from. And then we also talked about the 4 different things that we can use in order to improve our relationships. Being aware of our cognitive appraisals, seeing the best out of the other person and giving them the benefit of the doubt, doing new and exciting things with the person that you're with, either your partner or your friend, your family member, and communicating effectively, both your expectations and using good communication strategies, in particular when you're in conflict. I'm telling you, if you use all of these 4 strategies, you will have better relationships. Like I always say, I never share with you things that I haven't tried myself that have made a significant impact in my life. It's research-based. I tried it out myself, and I think it can make a big difference in your relationships. Well, I think this sums up this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, I encourage you to subscribe and share it with your friends and family, because after all, knowledge is power. And remember that you are loved, you are beautiful, and you are capable. See you next time.